signaling Thomas. Yes, perfect. We'll get ourselves started here. We are back. It's Thursday, and we are here for Think and Link, Brand New World, our newest version of this conversation. And we have two amazing guests with us today. We have Todd and Jeremy, both of which have been clients of Capsule's multiple times. I can say 3 on each, which is amazing to us, that people actually come back to us 3 times to do what we do at different in scenarios and events. Some of that we'll touch on as we get into this conversation, but it will definitely be a good one because these two know each other very well. There will be a lot of back and forth, a lot of banter, and an enjoyable conversation for sure. But first off, I need a word for our sponsors. The first one being chocolate, Verse Chocolate. It is dark chocolate, and Thomas will put it in the chat so you can see Verse Chocolate. I strongly recommend buying some, going there, either there or on Amazon, so our friend Scott Walker can say, hey, I got a purchase. Someone bought some while, at 9 o'clock or 11 o'clock at when you were doing your thing. So he knows these sponsorships actually work in some way. Verse Chocolate, it's amazing dark chocolate. And then Capsule, special projects firm here in Minneapolis, working with clients all over the country and actually some out of the country as well. So doing great work in a variety of fields. You can see that at capsule.us if you want to browse while you're listening to these gentlemen give some great answers. So, but before we go too far, when we schedule these things, right, we put them out there on the horizon. We said, hey, let's get Todd and Jeremy back together. We'll do a reunion. We just finished up 2 great projects for each of them. Let's showcase those projects. And they said, great, let's do it. And then we get to the day of or the day before, maybe, a couple hours before, and they say, you know what, we have to go silent on those. So we can't talk specifics on those projects, but we can talk around them. We can hint at them. We can saunter by them. We can go near them in a lot of ways, and I'll let them determine how close they get to those examples, but they are very intriguing ones, which also means, and I think this was really their purpose here, that they'll be able to be back on as guests again. Sure, they got together and said, you know what, we could double this, guys. Anyway, so we'll talk as close as we possibly can, but also with respect to the fact that they're both in a silent period. Before I do anything else, I want to make sure that they get a chance. And the format here is conversational. Questions in the chat as we go, please ask them. Mute, obviously, and video on if possible, because we love to see that. And then I'm going to turn it over to each of them to give a little bit of background on each other. And then Kelly's going to start with the first question. So, Jeremy, if you don't mind taking it away and giving us a little background on you and how you got to this moment in time.
Yeah, sure thing. And just to say thanks, Aaron, for having us. It's been a great journey each time we've worked with each other, and that's an endorsement in itself 3 times, maybe more in the future. And Todd as well. We go back several years and multiple companies, so it's really fun to be here. But my assumption coming in is that a lot of people maybe haven't heard of ECMC Education. So I'm the Vice President of Marketing for this organization. And we are focused on transforming career and technical education in particular as part of, if you look at post-secondary, which is in dire need of it. If we think of the hero of 2020 and 2021, it's the essential worker. And that worker is often a career and technical education output or beneficiary. And there's a huge shortage of those. And even in good times in our economy, there's a skill shortage. And I was just talking to someone the other day, and she said, you don't have to explain it. My husband's in contracting. We need people. So the problem we're trying to solve is this outdated, stodgy brand image that current technical education has. Sometimes it's stigmatized by being considered maybe an inferior form or only for certain folks. But that's not the case at all. So that's what we're focused on. We're a nonprofit. It's been an amazing journey, and we're part of a larger organization called ECMC Group, which is in post-secondary. And they're doing great things too. The ECMC Foundation funds $40 million in innovation for post-secondary across the country, just by way of example. And we're kind of one of those nonprofits that not many people have heard of, even in our backyard here, which is Minnesota, Minneapolis, Twin Cities. So good to be here.
Thank you, Jeremy. That was great. Todd.
Good morning, everybody. And again, thank you, Aaron and Kelly, for inviting us this morning. And Jeremy, it's good to be back with you. And we're looking forward to sharing with this group. Thanks for everybody that dialed us up this morning. And we're looking forward to talking about some of the things that we've done and experienced. My career spans kind of two significant halves. There was the advertising agency side that lasted for about 15 years. And then there's been the marketing side, which has mostly been retail. I did have a bit of a brief stint at Zenith Education Group, which is part of ECMC, where Jeremy and I work together. But it's been mostly retail since the advertising agency days ended. And it's been a lot of retail transformation, working with companies that were in need of a clearer articulation of who they were and what they stood for in order to be able to differentiate their brand in the marketplace. And I seem to find myself now stumbling into turnarounds. And so that has been fun to work for companies that really want and need help redefining who they are to become more competitive in the marketplace. And so I'm currently the Chief Marketing Officer at Lumber Liquidators, a company that's based in Richmond, Virginia, and we're working our way through a pretty significant transformation as an organization, as well as we become much more focused on how we take care of customers through what is really a very, very messy, intrusive, and expensive process of putting a new floor in your home. And that's been a fun project that we've been working on now for a couple of years. So again, glad to be here, and thank you all for coming.
Great. Thank you, Todd and Jeremy. Very excited to have you guys here, and a lot we want to cover. I know we only have about 50 minutes, but I'm going to jump right in. And actually, Todd, from what you were just alluding to with regard to repositioning, and both of you, obviously across sectors, multiple organizations, have both been heavily involved in brand development work, brand building, the evolution of a brand. How are you aligning internally, and then what's the external focus? If we could talk a little bit about, and have you both share your perspectives on some of the most challenging facets of brand building in your experience in your respective organizations, and then talk a little bit about the rewards that come with that, both internally and then the reaction you have from customers with regard to a new brand position. So who wants to start with that one?
I'll start. I think it really starts first and foremost within your organization, just what the concept of brand is, and what brand can do for the organization. More often than not, the perception of brand is it's the logo, or it's the advertising, and that's kind of where it ends. And I think there's a much broader definition of brand that permeates literally every corner and every facet of the operation, particularly as I've experienced it from a retail brand perspective. The brand definition often defines the customer experience. And if the organization is not bought into the brand positioning, then you're not going to be able to deliver that experience to the customer. So that has been the biggest challenge. And then going along with that has been helping a retail organization in particular get comfortable with the fact that they are positioning themselves to a particular customer. Most retail companies want to serve everybody, and that doesn't necessarily work because you can't be all things to all people. So you have to get sharp on who your best customers are to really understand what you're good at, and then you've got to go find more people like your best customers. And oftentimes you're crunching the math to try to understand how big that audience could be. We went through that exercise with the project that I'm working on now, and realized that we had an audience that was well over 8 billion in terms of size of prize that we could go after. So just helping the organization to fully understand what it means to reposition the brand, and how everybody in the organization has to play a role in bringing that brand to life. The thing I always say to our team is, look, if this just is designed to end up in better marketing, we've failed, because it has to impact the organization as a whole.
Right. That's great, Todd. Thank you. Thank you. Jeremy, follow up to that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And Todd and I had a similar experience at Advanced Auto Parts. I think I was there 6-7 years, Todd similarly. And every organization is at a different point, as many people probably know and have experienced on the call here today. And knowing what your starting point is hugely important, because that sizes up kind of the effort in many ways. I mean, if you're working at an Apple or a Nike or something, I mean, you don't have to do a lot of education there. And the age of the company matters as well. So Advanced Auto Parts was 80-year-old company. When I was at Nestle, renovating a 50-year-old brand, Carnation Instant Breakfast with the team there, which is now Carnation Breakfast Essentials, which brings me to, I think a deceptive challenge, we could take this a variety of different ways. And I think we should spend time on translating the brand into operations and experience and organization and culture. But if we look at brand as an arc, right, and there's a story there, starting way at the beginning is the strategy and the identity and so forth. One of the most deceptively hard parts of a brand at the beginning is just the naming. I've experienced that recently firsthand here, where we had a complete redo. And in your career, you rarely have that opportunity, and Todd was part of this, to just shut down an old brand and from nothing create something brand new. And naming is like, just come up with a name, right? It's easy, well, let's go have a whiteboard session. But as Aaron and Capsule know, it's an art, it's a science, it's excruciating. Everyone has an opinion on it. Everyone thinks their name is better. Once you think you have the set of 10 unique names, you take it to the lawyer, and they're not unique for the category. Someone else has them somewhere, big, small, what have you, and then you go back to the drawing board, you come back, you think you have the one that made it through the first round of trademark, and then you realize the second one, it got stopped again. And so, having gone through this exercise a couple times, like the one I mentioned at Nestle with the team there, I wasn't leading that work, I was part of it though. It's excruciating. So, being that we've worked with Capsule a couple times in a variety of capacities, I thought that was a fun one to throw out there for discussion. And Todd, feel free to lend your perspective or story, because I know we have some.
Well, and you've got kind of building on that challenge. Oftentimes when you are renaming, you may be coming off of something that maybe wasn't clear, and you're moving to something that you're hoping will be clearer. And so you still want to bridge a gap from one to the other, because you've got equity, you've got followership, you do have customers that have had good experiences with your former brand, and you certainly don't want to lose those customers as you're making a transition to something new. The example that Jeremy's talking about, that was a damaged brand that had been dragged through the mud of 60 Minutes and Frontline, and we wanted no part of the old brand and completely cut the cord. So we were starting over from zero with a brand new brand, but it was out of necessity. We needed a clean start. Our teams needed a clean start. They wanted to cut the cord with the thing that was around their neck that was strangling them, basically. And it was really hurting the business. And so we had to move to something completely new. And so I remember standing in front of we have most of our campus personnel in for a meeting, and it was a room of, 200 people. And I'm standing up there explaining to them the journey that we were about to go on in renaming the company. And I said, we're going to get to a point where I'm going to draw a line down the middle of this room, and half of you are going to love the new name, and the other half are going to hate it. And that's just the nature of the beast when it comes to naming. Everybody's got a point of view. Somebody's going to dislike it. Someone's going to like it. And you just have to have the fortitude to press forward and trust the work that you've done to get to the solution that you think is right, and go with it.
Exactly. And just as a point of clarity, the case study that we're referring to is an ECMC Education case study, whereby we acquired a damaged organization with the intent of turning it around and doing right for the industry. And so that was kind of the genesis of the work that my organization's doing, and we've made a tremendous amount of headway. But talk about challenge, right? We had to do it. We know we were probably gonna face a decline, but it was the right thing long term. And ultimately, these types of things require a lot of fortitude and courage to pull through them, because they're not short-term endeavors at all. Anyway, I think that's tying back to Todd's point earlier about bringing the organization along.
Mm-hmm.
It requires a lot of belief by leadership too, executive leadership. It can't just be kind of a passive embrace. It has to be a passionate one, and a championship role. And luckily we've had that here at ECMC, or else I probably wouldn't be standing here talking about this. We'd hopefully somewhere else talking about another brand, but that's an important facet of making these things work. Leadership at all levels.
Right.
Yeah.
Getting the buy-in early. And you've talked about, Jeremy, even mentioned in some of our previous conversations, obviously there's the operational side of integrating a brand, but also just the alignment, the cultural aspect of it, and getting that buy-in early will make it a much easier transition. So yes, thank you both for sharing that. Challenges indeed. We know naming is one of those firsthand at Capsule. So thank you for sharing a little background on our experience there as well. Aaron.
Yeah, that's great. It is. It's harrowing for sure, and it's also very rewarding to get through and get to the other side, and to show the results and have it show up in a lot of positive ways. There's something that we've alluded to in our previous conversations and emails going back and forth about visual identity systems, or the visual language of the brand, that you two have some history with, that I think corresponds also to one that I've used in the past as a really good example of Office Depot versus Office Max, on the fact that those are actually two separate companies and two separate brands, which, if you came in as a space alien, you wouldn't think they would actually be two separate things because they're so similar. But I want to just, let's talk about visual identity systems, and Jeremy, you can start this one off, because the importance of the visual language and how distinctive it is.
Yeah, sure. And, I think that just in general, to echo Todd, people think of brands as logos and visual identity systems, and even hardcore marketers think of those as maybe more of the superficial elements. But when done right, I think when tied into the strategy, can really create magic and lasting, enduring value. So I consider kind of the logo mark as a bit of a hello to your target audience, or and that's for the first time, but it's on a daily basis. So if you're, again, wearing your Nikes or what have you, you put them on, that's your hello for the day. You put them away at the end of the night, that's your goodbye, and serves a really important purpose. So visual identity, I consider to be kind of that experiential wrapper that communicates in every facet of the experience, whether it's in a retail environment or out in the world. And hugely important. So here at ECMC Education, when we translated the new brand, I mean, it influenced the furniture we selected. It's what's on the walls. It's we consider, when someone walks into our schools, we want to have a big orange hug around them, which all ties back to the visual identity. So it's really that feeling that comes through. And again, when it's tied to the strategy, which is probably a 10-minute discourse that I won't go on right now, it's really powerful, and it should be distinctive, right? And when we set out to do the Altiris brand here, it was a sea of sameness. It was a lot of flames and the same colors and same font types, and it was just felt like a pretty easy opportunity. But again, nothing is easy with marketing and branding. But yeah, we wanted to stand out too. So we feel like we've achieved that. And, some of the biggest reward that we've had is when a student comes through our school and they graduate, when they take their selfie, it's in front of that visual identity somewhere on the campus and the logo and so forth. So that's when it made it through. You also know when it made it through in the business results, show those successes, and that's really important too. But there are, experiences in our lives. Todd and I share one. I'm going to turn it over to Todd because he was a big champion of this one and an ardent leader for it. We worked at Advanced Auto Parts where it didn't have a lot of that distinction. And Todd was working to change that. Over to you, Todd.
Yeah, that was a fun journey. When we were at Advanced Auto Parts, obviously AutoZone was our biggest competitor, and they were orange and we were red. And oftentimes people wrote checks to AutoZone in our stores, and it was a constant struggle to truly set ourselves apart because we both had auto in our name. And we're both selling auto parts, right? So you walk into either one of our stores inside and they kind of looked and felt the same in terms of how they were merchandised and set up. And so we actually tried very hard to change the visual identity of the company. And of course, you run into the brick wall there of cost. We had 5,280 stores. And you do the math on just changing signage at that many stores, and it gets prohibitive pretty fast. And so I got shut down pretty early trying to change the color palette just from red and yellow to yellow and black, something that was maybe a little bit more masculine, a little bit more aligned to our largely male car guy audience. And we thought that yellow and black was, aligned with other pretty male heavy dominant brands like DeWalt and Stanley and others that kind of stand for work. But unfortunately, you don't always win every argument. And I lost that one, kind of went down in flames a couple of times with the president of the organization. But, we made our impassioned plea for that because we thought, again, every aspect of the business needs to help and contribute to what sets you apart from everybody else. And you can't just rely on one aspect of that to do the heavy lifting. It all has to fit together. So that was a program that, a challenge that we weren't able to overcome. And so we had to find other ways to drive the business, but it was a little bit harder because of that.
Yeah, I think, Todd, though, we did have some success. I drove by in advance the other day, and there were the big yellow and black posters out on the windows, which certainly made me feel good. They did a wholesale kind of a change of leadership at the executive and board level there. So they've gone through a lot of change, but that was encouraging to see. So I had a smile at that work. Didn't make it all the way through, but it survived, and hopefully it's serving them well.
And you see that coming through some of their graphic treatments and their advertising. They're much more black than they are red and yellow. And I think that helps them, again, just distinguish from the largely orange and red competitor in AutoZone. And so I think that some of the things that we introduced have hung on there and have come through in their visual identity and language. So that's good.
Yeah. I mean, the larger body of work that we did there, Todd, was, it started with the strategy, right? And, we've carried, we've repeated similar work here. You've repeated similar work where you are now. But, when we think of starting out and repositioning or inventing a new brand or what have you, there's a burst of strategy work that happens. Sometimes it involves, agencies like Capsule, but others brand strategy consultants and so forth. And that's exciting. That's where the magic happens. And, it translates into campaigns for advertising and so forth. And it's really the source of inspiration. The hard part, going kind of full circle, is how does that get translated through the organization? I think, Kelly, you mentioned the operations, the culture, the people. And we set out a 3-year roadmap for our transformation, Todd, at Advance. And that repositioning work was really, really strong. But it started with really focusing on not every customer, the right customer, the most important one, the most valuable. And I think just in general, that's just important to keep in mind that this, after the visual identity, to start with a question, it's a multi-year journey. So just even 3 years, we hit the 3-year mark here, and I retold the creation story to all of our employees because we had a lot of turnover. And, so it's just it's important to kind of re-up that commitment and to remember that genesis. But it all goes back to that burst of inspiration, early on.
Well, I want to pick up on a word that you used there as you were talking about the strategy, because that's the deceptively hard part at the strategy stage, is actually having your strategy be differentiated. It's not enough just to execute and have the differentiation perhaps come through in your advertising or the manifestation of your strategy. The strategy itself has to be differentiated. And when we were at Advance, to your point, the first time we tried to reposition that brand, because this was actually repositioning number 2 that Jeremy's talking about. The first time we repositioned the brand when we first arrived at the company was actually designed to go after kind of the magic middle of the category. And it was a service platform for kind of everybody and anybody that would need wiper blades or batteries or things of that nature. And the problem with that was that was ground that AutoZone had already grabbed. And they owned it better and they executed better. And we were pushing water uphill from the start on that strategy, and it failed pretty fast. And so the second time around, the repositioning of the repositioning was going after a much more aligned mindset for our brand and who we should have been talking to all along, which was the car guy. It's guys and gals who really love working on cars. And so it was more of the front of the audience scale, but it was really designed to go hard after people doing really complex projects, because that's who we specialized in serving, both out of the front of the store as a retail business and out of the back of the store as a commercial service running parts to garages all day long. And it was kind of the nice place for us to land to be able to service both of those. And it really was born of understanding a mindset of a customer who really wanted what we did best, not a demographic group or a behavioral group, but somebody who thought a certain way. And part of the reward of doing what we do is, for me anyway, seeing the light go off when you go and meet with somebody in the field who's working in one of your stores or as part of your regional sales group, and the light goes on that, yeah, that's really us. When you're describing the strategy and how we're going to win, if it syncs up with what you do really well as an organization, then that's the ultimate place to land, because it's easy then for your teams to just lean into what they already do so well. And maybe you just need to be more consistent in how you deliver it, but you're leaning into what you're good at versus asking people to put on a new suit of clothes, which is always uncomfortable.
Right. That's great. Yes. I thank you both. I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk about brand as an experience, whether you call it experiential marketing, obviously the branding lens. How are we creating, certainly in this day and age, I'd say even pre-pandemic, people don't just buy products or services anymore. They're looking for holistic solutions to their problems, meaningful experiences. Obviously, this pandemic has accelerated, I'd say, a lot of digital through digital marketing, digital branding. How do we bring the brand to life in a digital world? And so I'd love to get your perspectives, knowing that people are still longing for those connections and those authentic, there we go, Jeremy, I threw it in there, experiences. Can you share a little bit the challenges that you've seen in light of the pandemic and how we're connecting, and then really how brand as an experience has evolved over the last year, even 5 years, I'd say? Who wants to take that one first?
Sure. I mean, I can go. I think there are analogs between both of our businesses. So, going to school for, is not like a high frequency, experience for most. And then, reinstalling your floors, unless you're a contractor, is probably a once every so often. Mm-hmm. So we have to, work harder to create really kind of deep connections with our brand, because they're scarce in many ways. In our segment, which is career and technical education, it's typically traditionally really hands-on. And so when the pandemic hit, it was really a stress test. How are we going to do this? Thankfully, based on our focus on innovation, we had made a tremendous amount of great investments all the way through VR technology, goggles, and pilots, and so forth. So we had to create belief that could still deliver great results and outcomes for our partners, for our stakeholders, for most importantly our learners, but for employers as well. When they hire one of our students, are they going to be able to get a quality experience all the way through the value chain? So we created a case study, which I think is linked to, which tells that story. So I won't tell it here, but we had to do a serious pivot, and we created open labs on our campuses. We re-engineered them to above CDC safety standards. People could come and go on more convenient schedules. But we did a lot more than we ever thought that the industry thought they could online, again because we proactively made those investments. And we're found ways to create simulations to deliver those experiences in meaningful ways that were still exciting. And I think we're going to come out of this from an experiential standpoint a lot stronger, and in a position to continue to lead the transformation that I talked about. So I guess to tie it all up, one of the things that we've built as part of our brand, it's not, again, just the visual identity and the advertising campaign. We call our students Pathfinders, and our promise is to fully equip them, from beginning to end and throughout their careers. So we developed an all-inclusive training platform, which includes everything that they would need to succeed in this environment. So we provide the laptop, the iPad. They get the professional skills development, the certification, preps and fee, test prep and fees. So when they go to their career, they have all that. We give them the professional gear. So if you're in our trades program, you get tools like you can take out on the job. And that's been really as kind of a meaningful value proposition platform to continue to build on our brand strategy despite the pandemic. So you got to go again further than that, the visual identity and that brand hug that I talked about, and more into the experience and the value propositions that support it, and really create belief.
Yeah, and I think that the term brand experience to me often gets misrepresented as almost something artificial, or it's like a pop-up, stand-up kind of thing that's an extension of a brand or a campaign or something like that, versus thinking about every single touch point that you have with a customer and making sure that that experience that the customer is going to have is consistent with your brand. One of the things that we learned about our school experience and our best customer, and a lot of them were single moms, is that they needed a community to help them through the process of going to school, because life interjected or intervened, and it got in the way of them going to class and getting to a place where they could finish their education. So really creating a brand that, as Jeremy talks about, this orange hug, was really the community that was built around those students to say, it's not just you going through our program, it's us adopting you into our program and carrying you all the way through, so that you get to the end, you get the certification that you need to be able to get to the job that you want, that's going to help you take care of your family. And so every single aspect of the experience is looked at through those lenses to say, okay, are we making this process of going from nothing to certification aligned with who we want to stand for as a brand? And we're going through that at my current company, where we had largely been transaction focused, and we just wanted to sell you a floor, and that was it. And what we're realizing is what we're really good at is helping customers make the hard decision on what to spend and what to do for the vision that they have for the floor that they want to have in that space. And we're really good at helping customers make that decision so that they get to the right outcome. Because once you put the floor down, it's not going anywhere. You can't put another color of paint and over it, you're stuck with it. And sometimes we're talking $10, $15, $20,000 project.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot at risk in terms of getting the decision wrong. And so we think our value is being able to help a customer navigate through all those early thoughts and decisions to get to the right outcome. So everything that we're doing, and I'm also working on now our customer experience architecture to make sure that every single aspect of connection with that customer is thinking about how do we help this customer who's going through all this angst to get to the right decision? How do we make it easy and simple for them as a brand, and then become known as the brand that makes the process simple and easy? And that's what we're endeavoring to ultimately bring to life. But again, it's thinking about that experience holistically from every aspect.
Right. That's great. Thank you, Todd.
So important, Todd, because I know when I go to the big box stores, it's hard to find a person. So,
yeah, exactly.
Help out. There's some stuff on the shelf, so.
Yeah, and a person that even knows something, right? Knows anything about how to do floors. So it seems like a nice transition to talk about loyalty, because we've talked about the experience and the importance of that. And I gave you a little prep on this, but I do want to talk about paying for loyalty or earning loyalty, and back and forth between the two of those, because we had a good discussion about that earlier, and I'd like to go back to that. So Todd, if you don't mind starting this one off, but give us your perspective on loyalty and the economics of paying for it, and a good or a bad example out there. And it's fine if you trash a coffee shop out there somewhere. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about what loyalty is designed to do. And oftentimes companies are trying to maximize profitability through a loyalty program. And so they actually make it hard for a customer to be able to earn something through a loyalty program. They're just after the transaction. And when we built Speed Perks at Advance Auto, our perspective was different. We were struggling at the time with getting car guys to put more of their trips to us. We saw in the research that we had done that they were shopping at 10 different places, dealerships and competitors and junkyards and you name it. They were all over the place. But we wanted more of those trips, and we weren't getting them. And then when we were getting those trips, they were on average about $24.85. And despite all of our effort to try to get that over $25, we couldn't do it. And so we wanted to kind of solve a couple of problems with our loyalty program, but the foundational kind of thing that we wanted to accomplish was, how do we make this easy for a customer to earn? Because if they can earn something from us, chances are we're going to get that return trip coming back. And the other piece that I will tell you is that one of the things that actually helped us, and it was a happy accident, is that our POS system was a POS. It did not function very well, and it did not allow us to do any kind of points accumulation program for customers. And that was the standard approach in our category. Was you shopped, you spent money, you earned points, and then eventually you exchanged it for a charcoal grill 3 years down the road. But our perspective was, we want you to earn an award fast, and we want you to come back. And again, knowing that these car guys were working on projects every weekend, whether it was their car, their mom's car, their sister's car, they just loved working on cars. And so we wanted those trips. So we built a loyalty program that was point in time. And we said, if you spend $30 with us, we'll give you a $5 coupon towards your next trip. If you spend $100 with us, we'll give you a $20 coupon. And it was all electronic. We didn't want it to be, we didn't want you to have to carry a card or remember a number or anything like that. And we also wanted the sign-up process for the program to take no more than 7 seconds of somebody's time for an associate who oftentimes has 3 people deep at the counter waiting to check out. We didn't want them keying in a long process. So it was first name, last name, phone number, which was also your membership number, and your email address. It took 7 seconds to capture, and you were signed up, and everything was done electronically. We didn't send you anything. We didn't print any cards. We didn't print any collateral. So it was cheap. There was no liability on our books in the form of points that had to be cashed in later. It was coupons, effectively. And what we saw was, first of all, 10 million people signing up for the program in 14 months, which was huge. And then we saw a jump from the average basket of $24.85 up to $42. So $18 more on average in a basket for somebody coming back and redeeming one of those coupons. And so just the whole process of making loyalty simple and easy was both good for us as a company in executing it, but it also said to the customer, hey, we want you to earn, we want you to be rewarded for doing business with us, and we want to make this as simple as possible for you to be able to earn. So in our case there, it was, really keeping the customer at the center of what we were trying to build in order to make that program successful.
Yeah, Todd, and I still think that holds up very well today. I mean, if we look at our phones and how many apps we have for every program, I mean, that's a step in itself, a few steps, even swiping around. So you don't even need to pull out your phone. So I think that there's multiple levels of loyalty. That was a formal, structured form of loyalty that we implemented, Todd, to great success. And, it works to provide an incentive or a discount or a coupon if that customer increases his or her frequency or ends up spending more dollars. And that's what we saw. So, I mean, I think that those programs serve a really big purpose for growth. Another form of loyalty is, that affinity and referral. Which is kind of, it's not as incentivized, and I'm in a regulated industry, so I cannot incentivize referral in any way, or a recommendation for that matter, or reviews. So we're really focused on how to, leverage kind of our brand success and the experience that we've created to spur more and more of that, I guess, earned in, without the incentives, loyalty. And that's really tough, and it's going to take time, but it really ties back to having a strong brand and delivering an experience that someone's willing to talk about and share and recommend. And so that's really our goal. And that was our goal at Advance as well. I remember we were creating some of the work, and we thought that if our car guy, our core customer, was hanging up some of our stuff and posters and artwork and so forth in his garage, that would be the ultimate compliment and sign of loyalty. It becomes more badge-like. So, and we all have examples of those brands that we're willing to badge, but that's I think the holy grail.
Yeah, obviously, whenever we see our logos tattooed on people's bodies, that's always a good sign.
In the summer, you would see it here, yeah.
Right.
We'll come back to that. Actually, Jerry, if we can stay on this same, you're touching on a little bit. We talk about loyalty, customer spend, referrals. These are types of metrics to measure success of brand work. Can you both share a little bit more, just some more perspective on, what are some of those metrics of success that you've seen? Obviously, bottom line being a big driver of that, but what other metrics have you applied, or what's the litmus test for knowing you've been successful with your brand work?
Yeah, I think I mentioned one earlier, which was when it starts showing up organically in our various social media channels, and we have an internal network for our schools. So when they're virtual, we can maintain that community and sense of family that Todd talked about. And so there's a lot of great activity in there, and our brand shows up more often than not. So that's kind of one, I guess, measurement. I don't think it's a hard metric. We certainly we do our best to track referrals here. And, we're still pretty small, so we don't have the sophistication or the budget that maybe a big retailer or CPG company has. But in the past, Todd, we've done a lot of survey work. brand, tracking and some of those traditional methodologies. But ultimately, it comes down to the financials in terms of the ultimate metrics, and you get those KPIs that light up, which are always helpful. So, bottom line, when Todd and I get a visit from the CFO or anything else, it's not like, hey, the brand looks great. It's how's marketing doing? So we go to our dashboards as well, as much as praise the soft side of all this too.
There you go. Thanks, Jeremy. Todd, you down there?
Well, and then as a retailer that maybe has a few more resources than the education company, we're able to track things a little bit tighter. And obviously for us, the first thing that we're looking at is traffic, and omni-channel traffic in this case. What are we seeing in terms of footsteps into the box? What are we seeing in terms of visits to the site? And then how do those two interact with each other? Because in our case, our stores are not particularly well located. We grew up as a company that was built by a real estate investor, and his whole bent was to find cheap, out of the way store locations that maybe aren't that attractive, shall we say? And so our way of combating that for a largely female decision-making audience is to drive our customers first and foremost online, and to really build and establish an affinity relationship with our brand there before they ultimately come to the store and have a great experience with our team. But so we're looking again at traffic, we're looking at ultimately sales, and then we've got a pretty robust brand tracker with a company called Holland Partners that gives us really good insight into how we're doing from an overall awareness and consideration perspective, as well as how we stack up against our competitors. That has been really helpful to see where we're strong perceptually against how our competitors rate, and we get an NPS rating through that, so we understand, relatively speaking, how well people are willing to advocate for us based on the experience that they've had with us. So all of those things are important reflections of both the brand that we have, the strength of the brand as it translates to the experience, and then what the customer's ultimate reaction to that is. I think as Jeremy was talking about, the ultimate metric for us would be referrals and understanding advocacy. And we see some of that in Yext reviews that come through every day. We get a pretty robust download of everybody who's put a review online, which has been great. And you can see through the articulation of what they're talking about, the kinds of attributes that we would hope would come through that we're trying to use to move the needle. But really it's the advocacy and the referrals at the end of the day that we're trying to figure out how to read. And some of that's a function of our pro customers sending their clients in. And so we're working on that. But all of those things are, I think, key reflections of strength of brand leading to experience, and just how we're performing holistically.
That's great. Thank you. Good.
Great answers.
Yeah.
Kelly, I'm tempted to ask your question a little early. I know.
Go ahead.
Steal your question, but so without plugging someone's book, but because you each have
your book, Aaron? Yeah.
Yes, that person's book.
By my bedside that I read it all the time.
Yes. It was actually, I should tell this story because this is a funny one first. When we started this most recent project with Todd, he was recalling back to the previous one with Altiris, and we were on a book tour, and I wasn't as involved as I should have been. And so when he was selecting us, he said, so Aaron, I'm good with this, but I just want to ask before we say yes, you're not writing another book, right? Not immediately, because you disappeared on us halfway through that on a book tour and everything else. And I said, no book. No, I do believe that everybody's got a book in them, and that, you can definitely keep working on one in the back of your mind. and perhaps have one come out, but not one active for sure. So, but let's get back to the question, which is a book you're reading right now, movie you've watched recently, content you're consuming, something that is inspiring you or is interesting to you, I guess, that you can share with the audience. Jeremy, you want to start that one?
I've got two of those.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Ooh, two. There we go. Let's hear it.
Todd.
Just a coffee achiever that way, I guess. So my boss is a voracious reader, and he's constantly throwing books at us. And this one in particular, of all the ones that he suggested, has been really valuable to me, at least in where we are in the process of trying to create value for our brand and clarify that for customers. And it's called Lessons from Private Equity that any company can use. And private equity, their whole bent is to acquire an asset, put as much value into it or strip waste out of it, and then turn around and sell it. And they're in the value creation business. And there's some really powerful lessons about how you do that you can then learn and apply to your own business. And so that's been a really great read. It's a short one, you read it in a weekend. I found it to be particularly informative. And then the other one that I've just been kind of just drinking in, and so I'm going through it very slowly, but it's so good that I wanted to take my time. And that's called Amaze Every Customer Every Time. It's by an author named Shep Hyk, Hyk. And he's got 52 lessons that he's learned about how to create great customer experience. And he did a really kind of deep dive into Ace Hardware, who, for those of you that know Ace as the helpful hardware place, the thing that you may not know about Ace is that customer experience is just hardwired into their organization and their culture, such that their goal every year is to win the J.D. Power Award for the best home improvement retailer, and they've won it 14 out of 15 years. And the one year that they didn't win it, man, consternation, throughout the building, and everybody is concerned and upset. And that's a franchise organization, right? So everybody that owns an Ace Hardware is an independent owner, and yet they all adhere to the approach of being a really helpful, informative customer experience. And so there's some really, really powerful lessons in that book about how to create a great customer experience that I'd highly recommend.
That's great. Thank you, Todd.
Really good.
I'll take that one for sure as a super fan of Ace, with two within like 8 blocks of my house. So.
That's right.
Thanks for that. So yeah, I didn't put a ton of pre-thought into this one. I just thought I'd be transparent. So as much as possible, I tend to try to unplug and find like other sources of inspiration beyond kind of the business books of our day. I'll scan those and pick up some lessons, but I don't know, I guess I kind of have the more liberal arts background and philosophy, like, I guess Steve Jobs, Apple, like, connecting dots. But one business book that I've really, really enjoyed that kind of read more like an organic kind of story was and I've mentioned the brand several times. I don't think he even own Nikes, but Phil Knight, Shoe Dog biography, which was just a phenomenal read about the organic kind of passion behind that brand against all odds at every turn. And the improvisation and the luck and the hardship and the joy that was part of that story. I thought the ending was a little abrupt, but sometimes we think of brands in labs, kind of built kind of through artificial means. And I think I just have a real appreciation of the organic stories that get shaped by great agency help, like from those of Capsule and so forth, that get it to the right place over time. So that's my favorite kind of business read that I've read in a while.
That's great.
A great one.
Yes.
That's a great one. Thank you for that. I was expecting you to go to the Capsule YouTube channel and all the content there that you can watch of past presenters. And your Steve Jobs, connecting the dots, liberal arts, consuming all kinds of content from all kinds of places. I get that. Not that I'm putting in a plug for anybody who would like to go to those and subscribe, but it would be a good idea. It's not bad. There's a ton of really good content there. Kelly, do you have anything else to finish us off for this hour?
No. This was a great conversation. I knew it would be. Thank you both. And of course, we will have a full recording of today's discussion available for those that couldn't join us. But this was wonderful. Thank you for digging deep into brand. Obviously, something that's very important to Capsule and certainly a lot of the organizations that are on the call today. So no, Todd, Jeremy, thank you. Knew it would be a great, insightful conversation. So yes.
Thanks again for having us, and thanks to everybody for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. We'll see you all soon, hopefully. Thanks.
Yes.